Hello, and welcome to a rather dimly lit edition of the Wild West Gamer. And you join me, the Wild West Gamer, and I bring you the first official review from myself for the channel. It's not of a video game, unfortunately. I wanted it to be, but I've just not been playing any at the moment. So yeah. But no, instead it's a film. A film that most of you will probably know, purely because it's one of those films when you probably heard it was being made that you went, oh, really? Really Hollywood? There's not enough remakes and sequels? And I am, of course, talking about Red Dawn, the remake of the 1984 film starring Patrick Swayze and Charlie Sheen. I would like to think that during that film, based on his current behaviour, that Charlie Sheen probably thought it was actually happening. But yeah, that's just me. Or maybe it's him as well. But yeah, Red Dawn. I've literally just watched it, so if it's a little bit sketchy, I do apologise. But I'm just going to give you an overall opinion on it and how I view it. First thing to note is, as a gamer, it's really bizarre to watch a film that is incredibly strikingly similar to a video game you've played, yet they have nothing to do with each other. Which is it's like a paradox. It's really hard to describe. I'll fill you in a little bit of back information so that you sort of can see why. The original Red Dawn was written and directed. It was co-written, and there was another writer, but it was directed and part written by John Milius. I've got that name right there because I could not remember it off the top of my head, so I made sure I had it up. Yeah, John Milius, who, yes, like I said, did the 1984 Red Dawn. But he also was brought in by THQ to do Homefront. The video game set in an occupied America, United States, where North Korea has invaded after annexing a lot of the Asian countries into it, forming this East Asian superpower, which using a EMP takes out America's defences and communications, and then sweeps across up to the Tennessee River, leaving that irradiated. So there's like this natural barrier preventing any further retaliation from the surviving American forces and government in the lower states, in the southern states of America. Yeah, and John Milius scripted that game, the story of that game. Though there is some debate from THQ employees as to how much he actually did contribute. But yeah, when you watch the new remake of Red Dawn, it's incredible how strikingly similar these two things are. And despite the fact that, as far as I'm aware, I couldn't see in the credits anywhere, John Milius actually had nothing to do with this, which is really weird, because you've got the situation where you've got a film that is a remake of another film that was written by the man who wrote a game which is essentially the first Red Dawn, only with Koreans, which is now a film with Koreans in it, which is essentially the video game. If you can, work all that out, it's bizarre. It's completely nuts. The new Red Dawn is essentially the Homefront movie. With different characters in mind, but it is essentially that. All the things you'd expect to see happen, that happen in the Homefront game if you played it, or essentially it mimics it, beat for beat. I'm not saying the whole beginning scene. There's nothing that brutal, but there are detention centres. There is brutality on the part of the Korean invaders. There is the stoicism in the resistance movement, the Wolverines. There's that same sort of camaraderie and sort of, there's one guy who's very much, I'm going to kill me as many Koreans as I can get, and there's another, very silent, sort of heroic leader, and and if they don't feel like characters from the game, they kind of come across as all stereotypes. But that's sort of the weird part of it, that as a gamer I came across and found with the film, that it's weird how similar is to the game, and the game is written by the guy who did the first film and all that. So that was the first thing that I had to get over. The second thing is, of course, there is again this actual backstory to the production of this film, and that was originally the Koreans were supposed to be Chinese, which is, as you can imagine, is kind of a bit more of a hot plate to be on, really, seeing as the Chinese and the Americans have a slightly it's not a temperamental relationship, but their relationship it's while they both respect each other as essentially superpowers. I mean, China, regardless of what your political views are, I don't think it's hard to deny China is making leaps and bounds as far as its influence in the world. And it really is coming along incredibly quickly, economically, politically, militarily. They are seriously moving at quite a rate. And so I think for an American film to picture them in such a way would probably have a detrimental effect on their relationship. I'm not saying it would cause hostilities, but I just think as a sign of respect, that's why they were dropped, and so the North Koreans were introduced. Of course, with that brings this sort of implausibility. There wasn't really, Homefront, regardless of its realism, though to be fair, I thought it was a fairly well put backstory, which was done by ex-CIA operative, I guess, intelligence officer, who tried to create this very logical and grounded series of events leading to North Korea ever having the ability to invade the United States of America. This film never does that. It never seems to set that up, and you kind of left wondering, going, really, how would North Korea do this? But I appreciate Kim Jong-un taking over as dictator of North Korea after the death of his father, which is quite bizarre because actually Kim Jong-il died after this film was released at the cinemas. I think, yeah, it was. So it's very bizarre to know that this, and I think, was it a stroke or a heart attack he died? I think it was a stroke, and I think again he dies of a stroke in this one. So it's really bizarre. It's really quite eerie, actually, that this film's, as far as I go, matches it, which inadvertently does give that a small shred of sort of realism, and does slightly ground it at the beginning. So yeah, that's that sort of thing set up. Oh, and also the North Koreans managed to invade America by using an EMP. It's like everyone's using EMPs these days. Is that really? Does no one use nukes anymore? Oh wait, no, that's just the Russians, who coincidentally turn up in this film. I'm going to try and keep spoilers at a minimum, but I'm not going to ruin anything for you by saying the Russians turn up in this. It's nice to see that if you can't do join who you can sort of thing. It doesn't exactly. It's just really bizarre. It's like, what is there, like a league of super evil, waiting behind the curtains who are going to jump out as well. Anyone who's ever got a grudge against America. I was sure that they were going to roll out Al Qaeda and the Taliban, and everyone was going to jump on the boat, at this, because there is this scene where there's this, I guess this press conference in a way, sort of, like a bit of a getting your tallywhacker out and measuring it sort of thing. The Koreans saying, look how big we are, and all sat behind him is all of Korea's most high-ranking officers and their allies, as in a Russian Spetsnaz officer. Yeah, and it's just that whole thing there totally feels like there should be, every other person who's ever held a slightest grudge against America sat there, sort of like, yeah, one up for us sort of thing. So that was a little bit, a little bit okay. So I'll sort of start at the beginning, and essentially, like I've said, the film is about the United States of America being invaded by the North Koreans, not the Russians, like in the 1984 version, no, by the North Koreans, and a group of youngsters, who I don't remember any of their names. A couple, I mean, as in the actors or the characters. I remember a couple of characters' names, and I think a couple of the actors, but overall, none of them left that much of an impression. But yeah, basically a group of youngsters escape the initial landings by North Korean paratroopers, the first wave, who had taken hold of the country, ready for the rest of the invasion force to link up, meet up with them, and they escape into the woods, into the wild, start gathering resources, and plan to basically launch a guerrilla war, sort of an insurgency, on the North Korean forces, which they do to varying degrees of success. The whole film, which is 93 minutes long, doesn't it's not hard to watch. I mean, it's fairly enjoyable. I mean, it's got guns, it's got explosions, it's got people firing off light machine guns on full automatic, really pumping away, 50 cals going off, RPGs, a couple of tanks, stuff like that. It's cool. There's some nice. I appreciate action films. I'm not a pretentious dick. I'm not one of these people who goes, oh no, action films. I like that sort of thing. Stuff like that's cool. And it's nice to have something you can just sit back and watch. There are good guys, there are bad guys. That's it. The only problem with this film is that I think it misses the point. It really doesn't seem to quite get why it exists. The 1984 version, if anyone's seen it, some of you may have, certainly had this really nice running theme that whilst they were fighting the good fight to defend their homeland, they had to resort to dirty tactics because they were the weaker force. The only way they could even it was by ambushing, surprise attacks, perhaps. When the really scene that really sticks with me, again, this is a spoiler, so look away now. In the one scene that sticks with me from the original Red Dawn is the part where one of them gets shot, and they essentially booby trap themselves so that when the Russian soldiers find them and move the body, they'll be killed. And that was quite an intense subject to deal with back in the 80s. No one had really dealt with a home invasion story from the American point of view. Such a thing was quite really a hard concept to grasp, and especially seeing as the Cold War was still going on at this point. The whole film was quite a hot subject to deal with. It was quite a film to be made, I imagine, and perhaps even the political controversy that surrounded that film, may have actually been quite palpable if you've been sat between Russian American diplomats at the time. I imagine if someone had laid that film down in front of them, it would have caused some stares and some awkward shuffling. And I mean that's the thing. This film doesn't have anything really like that. There's no, especially with the American War, American wars. Well, I say the American wars. I mean the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq with the coalition forces. You would think that because America has had to deal after September 9/11 and subsequently on from that, they've had to deal with insurgency, with terrorist attacks, with fighting a guerrilla war, that they would really try to capitalize on the whole sort of notion of, fighting a dirty war for the right reasons. I'm sorry, don't misconstrue that as me saying that's what, what's happening in the Middle East. What I mean is that sort of thing, fighting, fighting a superior force using underhanded means. That should have been brought into this film to show that, well, yeah, these guys are fighting the good fight. They are having to resort to some really, shady tactics, stuff that, sort of kicks, kicking the trousers sort of thing. It's that they're not fighting this clean cut, face to face, fisticuffs, pistols at dawn sort of thing. They are really fighting, as with pulling hair and using teeth and nails. That what doesn't help is, apart from not doing that, I mean, he doesn't have to do that. If you're not going to do that, at least have characters I can invest in. Every character in this is just a cliche or a stereotype. You've got the grizzled war vet, played by Chris Hemsworth, who I'm sad to say is, he's slightly going down on my expectations of, whether or not really I want to watch him in any other film, unless he's throwing magic hammers around and wearing Viking armor. He did play Captain Kirk's dad in J.J. Abrams' Star Trek, which was really cool. The guy was on screen for about 10 minutes, and he was awesome in that. So yeah, more stuff like that, please, Chris. This, whilst we get that you're this tortured soul, I suppose we're supposed to get that. It never really feels believable, because for some reason he, despite I'm assuming playing an ordinary grunt, again it's not really that explored what he did in the army, you just know he's in the United States Marine Corps, he for some reason able to teach them all of this amazing all these insurgency tactics. I get that he's been in Iraq, but it doesn't mean that he knows how to do all this stuff. Yet you see him teaching them how to make this and do that, and and all this sort of stuff, which for an ordinary grunt is a little bit beyond. I mean, there are even things special forces guys know how to do that doesn't come into this sort of thing that he's teaching them. I'm not going to say what, because it's not something they spend loads of time on. It's just there is the the montage of them learning all their tricks and secrets, and it just feels really just not well done at all. To be fair, if they were going to do it, if they wanted to give it some believability, these guys are having to rely on, again, these guys are having to rely on their wits. Show them killing animals and to make fur clothes and stuff like that. Show me them having to perhaps deal with an instance of dysentery, and then having to try and clean water, boil it. They've always got mobile phones that work. You see them clicking away using them as surveillance instruments. I get that it's meant to represent the age of technology, but first of all, EMP, which would fry anything that wasn't protected by it. And secondly, how is he charging them up? These guys are living in a cave in the woods. What he just what's he found a plug socket? So he's like, oh, cool, awesome. I can coincidentally have my charging cable as well. Hey, free energy. Doesn't work like that, I'm afraid. Again, films that break the rules that they've already pre-established really piss me off. You can't go, well, an EMP fried the entire United States army and stop them ever launching a counterattack. Okay, but this kid's iPhone still works. That doesn't work for me. Sorry, that's a little bit screwy. So that's something that, I mean, this is, all right, you can say this is kind of really feeble stuff to pick up on. You're you're reading too much into it. But but if every little bit feels like it's not working towards this overall vision, then it just falls flat. I can abide a couple little errors here and there. I mean, The Dark Knight has some it's an amazing film, I love it, but even that's got bits in it that really dick me off, bits that piss me off. The whole thing, Batman doesn't use guns, but his motorcycle uses 2 fucking huge cannons. Okay, what? So what? That's fine, because how? The beginning, the Batmobile fires 2 rockets at this inside the multi-story and blows some shit up while he's dealing with Scarecrow. So you're telling me not one bit of shrapnel flew off and gleamed a guy in the eye? I get this guy beats the shit out of people because he can temper his rage, but you're telling me that he can control where flying debris goes? Okay, but again, because those are small things in a really awesome film, I can deal with that. But this film, no, too many little things, too many little plot holes and problems. So yeah, there's that bit. The other characters, you've got well, who have you got really? You've got the brother, the impulsive younger brother. Oh my god, this guy pissed me off. This is a war, dude. You've just seen your... Well, alright. Again, I don't want to lay down spoilers, but essentially this kid should have motivation not to be a dick, but he uses this motivation to be a dick. And I'm not just talking a small dick, we're talking a big dick here. He's constantly screwing up. His older brother has been in the army. He knows his stuff. He's been trained. He is a competent, Marine. Instead of listening to him, which no one else has a problem. There are this group of other, there's these other people. They have no problem. They're like, yes, sir, 3 bags full, sir, all that sort of stuff. They're happy to, listen to him. The kid brother, yeah, you see him learning this stuff, you see him doing that, but, his girlfriend who's been captured, which they never explain, you see normal Americans walking around, but for some reason she's put in a detention camp. Okay, what, is she the president's daughter? No, she's not. She's just a random Joe, but apparently she needs to be there as a convenient plot device for him to, later on go and try and rescue her. And yeah, he just completely... The guys told him, be part of the team or people die. So what does this guy do? He, goes and twats up their, one of their most important plans. Again, it's hard to, you've got to really mention the downfalls of this, and the downfalls are in the story. There are plot holes. If I don't mention these, I'm really not going to have anything to talk about. But this is one of the problems. This film has plot holes. It has bad character motivation. These characters who should be, sort of galvanized in this, one single fight, and using the loss of their loved ones to make them want to fight as hard as they can, instead use it for performing the most stupid and mundane of things, stuff that makes you go, what, really? That's what you would do? Instead of trying to, even the playing field, you would seriously go and do what you just did. Okay, well clearly if this shit ever happens, I don't want you to hit me because you're a fucking retard. Oh yeah, that's a thing as well. While I'm not a massive fan of that word, I did use it then, but to be fair, the kid's actions do borderline on, the mentally ill. He seriously has this ridiculous inability to just listen. It's only after the cliched, plot device is dropped in that, he learns his ways, and him and his brother have to have a heart-to-heart in the woods, and it's just forced. Everything's forced. Everything's got to be people sitting around looking mopey and people wondering, what's wrong? It's like, nothing's wrong. I'm just, I'm thinking about the fight. It's like, oh, come on, dude, please, don't be a dick. You're sat out here in the woods underneath the moonlight, all by yourself, looking all, into distance, all 1,000-yard stare. It's like, come on, man, please. You guys are supposed to be young killers. You've been murdering people. I mean, yeah, all right, you're fighting the good fight, but really, come on, let's see some real human emotion. Yeah, there's just, that's it. That's how it is. It's just really forced in places, and really hard to quite absorb what you're watching because the 1984 version, did it so much better. And perhaps that's the problem. I mean, I spoke about in the last video about Aliens, Colonial Marines. Is it if you take a franchise, and you show it so little respect, this is what happens. You have a bad final product. The overview you always get with these things is that they don't support the logic of the world they're in. They set this book of rules. There's this it's not a theory, I guess it's a principle, a set of rules that if a film sets, a film can be as fantastical as you want it, but it has to set rules within that universe. It has to play by those rules and it has to obey them. Because if it doesn't, people watching it, there's no sense of verisimilitude. You can't invest yourself into it because the world feels phony. It feels fake. Films like The Dark Knight, films like Inception, films like Star Trek, Star Wars, films like that, all degrees of varying plausibility, all degrees of fantastical elements, all play by rules. They don't break those rules. They play those rules. And sometimes that means characters have to die. But in films like Red Dawn and in games like Aliens Colonial Marines, they break those rules. They don't pay the right fan service. They break the rules, and the overall impression is that you're just watching a stupid product of some feeble imagination. It's not a good thing that you're watching. And I remember now. One of the characters, says motard a lot. That's what I was going on about, earlier, before I went off on a tangent. Motard. If someone can please leave in the comments box what motard means, I will be grateful, because if it's an American thing, cool. If it's not, really? Making up curses now? I mean, you've dealt with some, well, not heavy stuff, but you've dealt with some fairly dark themes. You can't just call the guy a dick, because that's what he was being. My overall consensus is that I appreciate trying to in the 21st century, in 2013, trying to make a relevant, alternative present, film, which I really like. I really like alternative history media. I really like that. I love books. I love the Man in the High Castle, which is being turned into a TV show, which I'm really excited about. Things like that. And if anyone wants to find out about that, you really should. It's a really, really cool book. Definitely check it out. Definitely read it. And I hope the TV series is just as good, or perhaps even does some little things different. Basically, it's about what the Second World War had been won by the Germans and the Japanese in the European theatre and Pacific theatre, respectively. Stuff like that is really cool. So I really enjoy stuff like this, twists on history, twists on the current paradigm, stuff that you don't expect to happen, which does, and it's nice to see how it interacts, especially with the sense of irony, that it's America being invaded when we really, from history. Again, it's not a jab at America, but America tends to be the invader. Whether politically you believe for the right or wrong, they tend to be the invader because they are a superpower. Currently, despite the fact that what I was saying about China earlier, America is technically still the only world superpower. And that's the thing. To see America in that situation is takes your breath back. You're like, what? This can't happen. America is America. It's land of the, home of the land of the brave and the free, and the American dream, and cheeseburgers and McDonald's, and and all that good stuff, all that jazz. The idea is there, and this is what annoys me the most. The idea is there. I mean, this film was basically written. I wouldn't have minded seeing, actually, to be fair, Russians in it again. I mean, as long as you do it with believable characters, I can buy that. I mean, I've also just watched Red Tails. I watched Red Tails yesterday, partly because there seems to be a lack of World War II films coming out at the moment, which I'm a really big fan of that genre. Red Tails, again, is a film that focuses on a very, new and interesting part of World War II, which was the United States black pilots during World War II. And it's a good film. Again, this is the thing. You kind of do that. You don't really they're not bad films, because they're you can watch them, but they're not. When you go good, you kind of go, yeah, they're kind of good. I sort of became Bill Cosby. I don't know what the fuck that was. Clearly it's getting late. I haven't rehearsed this at all. Sorry. But that's the thing. Red Tails is one of those films you can sit and watch, but the characters felt cliched and generic, and especially the Germans, the scarred pilot, always, he never says anything unless it's a sneer, it's like Das Leben, it's like, oh, come on, please. Das Boot was a film that made, you believe that the Germans weren't blood-sucking monsters. Alright, yes, I'm not going to go now and say, World War II, the Germans were the best of people. History's told us there were some awful atrocities. But my point is, if you're going to do a film where you've got an enemy and, a good guy, I understand that the Hollywood principle is to make sure that you know the good guys and know the bad guys. But with Das Boot, with that film, you were seeing it from the bad guys' point of view, and yet you still, felt they were humanized. You still felt a connection. You understood their fear, their the anticipation they felt, when they were diving or coming up, or they were doing an attack. You sensed the courage in these guys and the camaraderie. And these really made you question, your perception of the difference between right and wrong, and how during warfare, not everyone's white and not everyone's black. There's the grey is the real main colour. Everyone's really morally, they're all sort of quite absent. No one fights wars just because one's good and one's bad. And this is the thing. Films like Red Tails, they do caricatures, and because we associate caricatures with either being good or bad, it makes it then very easy for us to realise who we should be supporting and who we should be sneering at, like a pantomime villain. Don't do that. Red Dawn could have been a 21st century action film with very grounded and based enemies and good guys. I think it sounds stupid, enemies and good guys. It sounds like I'm 12, but you know what I mean. It could have been a film where the aggressors as well as the retaliators, the aggressors and defenders, both could have had very human elements. We could have seen, both sides from the same point of view, but we would have known because these guys were fighting for their homeland, and because these guys were invading, no matter the fact that it may just be because they were being ordered to or whatever, we had to support these guys, or we could make up our own idea. There's nothing wrong with that. Give us a film we can make up our own idea with. The Green Zone, a film starring Matt Damon. Sorry, you have to do that if you say Matt Damon's name. If you don't, then what's happened to you? Who are you? Yeah, the Green Zone. Again, that shows the Iraqi high command, I guess you would call it. Their generals, their lieutenants, their colonels, majors, whatever it is. You see them in very human roles. They're not these horned devil-like creatures, who conspire to, bring about the downfall of all, good people. They are just human beings. And that is what and likewise in Green Zone as well, you find out the Americans on the side you're rooting for, they themselves, are, underhanded and corrupt. So that's what we want to see. That's what we should be given, because then you get a much more believable sense that what you're watching is is real, is happening, and it makes you invest. You go, well, God, I'm really caught in a real moral quandary here. I really like the the lead good guy's character, because he's doing this because he's seen everything he's left teared away, and he's fighting for that one good thing he can have back. But every time he kills another soldier, he gets perhaps a bit further away from it. So he's inadvertently caught in this paradox of never being able to have the life he wanted back ever again. Likewise, though, the Korean lieutenant, the general, whatever, he's fighting because once the war's over, once the country's stabilised, he can go back and see his wife and his newly born child. But both of them are conflicting against something which neither one can coexist. One or the other, and one has to fall. And that would be an interesting film. I mean, come on, I don't know anything about films and stuff like that. I just enjoy them and I just have my opinion about them. But if that is an interesting idea, there, two ideas which are both they're both acceptable, both fine ideas, but they can't coexist because both sides are aggressors. They're fighting against each other. One has to give, and so you're the final showdown has that tension, because you're like, who do I want? Who do I want to see happy? when you leave, when you leave the theatre, you want endings sometimes to be bittersweet, and war films have to be that way. Especially films like Saving Private Ryan. Now, Saving Private Ryan, I'm like, that film's been out for ages, so I'm not going to spoil this for anyone. I'm going to give you now a bit of time, if you've not seen it, to turn the volume off, click off the video, do whatever. All right. So I'm going to give you 5 seconds. All right. Alright, look, 5 seconds, I counted that. You count that, I count that, Dan counted that. If you carry on listening, you hear something you don't like, it's your own fault. Don't leave messages saying, you bastard, you ruined Saving Private Ryan for me. Saving Private Ryan. Tom Hanks dies. Ah! See, I said it. Sell that now. Can't go back. Tom Hanks dies. But Matt Damon lives. Ryan lives, and the overall, we learn war isn't a game. It's not something that just because you are the good guys, you come out of it fine. Sometimes bad things happen, and there is a price to pay. In fact, a lot of the squad get killed in Saving Private Ryan. I think it's only Matt Damon's character, and I can't remember his name. He plays Riven. Is it Riven? Yeah, Riven, the guy with the BAR, the one who was a bit of a paddy with Tom Hanks when the German soldiers digging his own grave. I can't remember the name of the actor now. It's really bad. He's quite a good actor, but he's the only one who survives as well, alongside Matt Damon's character. Oh, and Upham, of course, as well. So out of this entire squad, all these guys have died to save one guy, and that's the price of war. It's not about who wins and who loses. It's about sacrifice and doing the right thing for the wrong reasons. It's moral, complexities, that stick up your ass and make you go, what? War is just the most awful thing in the world. How can people want to keep on fighting these things when it makes men tear themselves apart, both physically and mentally and morally? Red Dawn does have a couple twists. It does have a very big twist. Just because I was assuming this film was going to play by the rules, the entire way through, the guy and the girl were going to live happily ever after, and everyone was going to be there at the wedding, but they were going to lose that one guy, the spunky, chirpy sidekick who, had always been their reason to carry on fighting, and selflessly sacrificed himself or something like that. This film was almost playing beat for beat, the proper sort of cliched action film. It does throw up though near the end a couple sort of like, what, really, did just do that? Jesus, that's fucking brave for a film that was basically going to go beat for beat for your, sort of your brain dead action film. So there is some twists and turns. I don't rate films. I don't give them like a 1 out of 10 or a 1 out of 100 or whatever. I don't think so. I think opinions always what you should listen to. I have tried to be balanced with this review, in all fairness, and by bringing in other bits and bobs from other films to sort of weigh up how I feel about the film. I did sit and watch it. Sometimes I will just end a film there and then. If I'm seriously not engaged, if I'm not motivated to keep watching it, if I just think it's going to be a waste of my time, I'm not going to dedicate it, any further, time from my life if I think it's a poor film. But I did sit and watch this film the whole way through. Only 93 minutes. It's not the longest film out there. There are definitely longer films, and less good films that you'll still sit and watch. So this is easily watchable. I would say check it out. If you like war films, you like action films, if you're a fan of Chris Hemsworth, it's an alright performance. If you're a fan of the original Red Dawn, if you're a fan of Homefront and you wish they make a film out of that, this is it. When you get it, if you ever buy it, screw it, just cut out Red Dawn and stick in Homefront. It's essentially that. The whole point of calling it Red Dawn is a bit weird because whilst, I get the whole Red Dawn, Reds, communist, all that sort of stuff, but there's never really any communist over themes about it, overtures about it. There's never any real push between capitalism and communism. There's no real clash between ideologies of the West or the East. There's a little bit where there's someone giving some spiel about how bankers are greedy and stuff like that. It's like, dude, I know that. It doesn't make me a commie. That's just common knowledge. they're all parasites. So I don't need this film to tell me that. I mean, Christ, if this film was going on that, then I'd be voting for the Koreans the entire way. Likewise, yeah, it is a film that sort of, again, it just misses all the themes it should be, really playing on, all the, not for, cheap thrills or, anything like that, but it just should. That's the film that should be made. So it's a shame, really. The overall feeling I have is, yeah, it's a shame. It's a shame the film didn't come out the way I would have expected it to. To be fair, a lot of remakes nowadays, even sequels, are just really missing the entire point of why they exist. So that's really it, really. That's all I have to say about it. I mean, if you feel that I've been overly negative, leave a comment saying why. If you enjoyed it, say why. If you agree, say why. It's up to you. I mean, that was just my opinion, and I only give it because people who perhaps wondered what it was going to be like can check out my opinion, and if you agree, go into the film with an open mind, and then at the end of it, if you still agree, go, yeah, I see why. If you don't, likewise again, go into it with an open mind, and if you still don't agree with me at the end, cool. Again, I'd love to hear from you, and I'd love to, see why that is, what bits of it you enjoyed, and perhaps you can shine new light on it, and make me enjoy it. So yeah, that's it really. I'm just having to think about what videos I may be doing in the future. Probably going to try and do a game one. There are a couple retro runs. That's it, I do remember. Especially today, I got out, because of the previous video about Aliens, Clone Marines, and because that I'm still raging about the real dog turd that was Aliens, Clone Marines. I'm going to do a review, not of the best quality. Like I said, I don't have a digital recorder for gameplay, but I am going to try and set up the webcam so that I can capture some gameplay footage, and I'll try and perhaps do my first properly edited video, with either commentary or not, or perhaps I'm going to have to do 2 separate videos. Really love to do one though, just one gameplay and one commentary video altogether. But without keeping you in suspense any longer, it'll be of that there Alien Trilogy, a game that I really enjoyed. I picked it up for $2.99, and I would seriously recommend picking that up. It's an absolute steal at that price. I mean, a lot of PlayStation 1 games are becoming exceedingly rare. I had to fall on my hands and knees to get a copy of Resident Evil 2 off of a mate. I had to really beg, kiss some serious behind to get that. So yeah, if you can pick it up, I would recommend it. That's PlayStation 1. I think in fact it is only PlayStation. No, it's on the PC as well. But I would seriously try recommending to pick it up. But yeah, before this goes into a review of that, I shall leave it there and say thank you very much for watching. I appreciate that this one was perhaps more ramble-esque than normally. But like I say, just thanks for tuning in. If you like it, please do subscribe. And yeah, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time on the Wild West Gamer. Goodbye.